So yeah, we're responsible for creating all the public-facing education that our firm creates. So it's online courses, it's articles, it's webcasts and live streaming. We actually have a Twitch stream. We do we used to do in-person events, now they're virtual events. And then we do a lot of video content as well. And all of it is with the goal of empowering retail investors. So my team in particular has been especially focused on transforming our YouTube channel into an education focused channel. And we actually just recently passed 250,000 subscribers. So that was a big, exciting milestone for us.
Thanks, Ben. And to Better Mortgage, we have 2 content marketing leaders from that team. So I'll let the ladies there introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bianca Bonfirm. I am a senior marketing manager at Better.com, Better Mortgage. We have a lot of names as it goes with financial services and the legality around that. But I oversee our content and SEO efforts from an acquisition standpoint, developing content to drive to the website and making sure it's SEO optimized. That's mostly long form content, but expanding into video as well. And then our conversion-based content, which is really helping those in the funnel really understand the mortgage and home buying process, which is not as clear as it probably should be. So we're looking to educate to empower through our content and ensure it's throughout the product flows, in the right emails, and delivering the right piece of content at the right time. The team is fairly young, about 1.5 years, but have expanded quite a bit in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So with that, I'll actually pass it to my right-hand person, Kristin.
Hi, y'all. I'm Kristen Olton. I am a content strategist at Better, working alongside Bianca. I basically help manage all of the SEO, conversion, and educational content development and amplification at Better. I've been with the company for going on 5 years this September, and so I have a lot of experience in the mortgage industry and hoping to make not only mortgages accessible for people, but our content and financial literacy accessible for our customers.
Thank you, Kristin and Better Mortgage. And now Meredith Rodemeyer from Goldman Sachs.
Hello, everyone. I'm Meredith Rodemeyer. I'm with Marcus, which is Goldman Sachs' relatively new-ish consumer business, and I lead our content strategy for Marcus. And I know, as this group knows, content can mean a lot of different things, but for our group, that really is primarily articles and videos to educate both prospects and customers. And the way we think about our content and sort of bucket it is in 3 pillars. So our product content, articles, videos to support the products that Marcus offers, sort of general financial education content. So everything from how to build credit to how our bonus is taxed. And then this third relatively new bucket, which we're calling, Heard at Goldman Sachs, which is essentially thought leadership, where we take the more sophisticated Goldman Sachs content and really try to translate it and make it understandable to the average consumer. And then I would say underpinning all of that is SEO, which is an important strategy for us.
Thank you, everybody. So a reminder to the audience members, if just to mute yourselves if you are not a panelist, we would greatly appreciate that, just to avoid some background noise. And so with that, we're going to get started. We have a lot of ground to cover today. So I think one of the biggest questions that our attendees would like to know, because I think we're all curious about the inner workings of all of your respective content marketing teams. So if you could just give us some insight into what your content marketing team looks like. And I just mean the internal content marketing team. So I'll start with Meredith.
Sure. So I think what's a little bit unique about our team is we are the creators and producers of the content. We don't necessarily own our distribution channels, which means we really get to focus our energy on lots of writing and video creation, but can also present some challenges in actually making sure our content gets the right views and traffic, and requires us working with our stakeholders in a very close way. But I think the way we're set up is really, we have, I'll say, 3.5 dedicated writers. Our team is entirely in-house. So three, and I say 3.5 because one of those writers is kind of split between doing brand marketing work and social copy. One SEO lead, one full-time editor, one video producer / writer, and then a project manager. So we're a pretty tight-knit team. everyone is full-time and everyone sits together. We're back in the office now, so it's been interesting to actually like see people in person and kind of great for collaboration. And then, you know, we work with our stakeholders across the business to really understand, that's my dog Max, by the way, who likes to appear and many of my Zoom calls, as Shindy knows, making himself comfortable right now. But we'll work with our lines of business and our product teams to understand what their content needs are and how our team can support them. We'll also work with the other marketing functions to understand if they're focused on a specific campaign or initiative that content can support. And then our team is really in charge of the actual like creation. And we also have to work with like product folks on the tech side to make sure that our content actually gets published on the website and has all the right like CTAs and you know, we can embed our videos and FAQs and all that good stuff. So I think, you know, we're about 8-ish people now. When I started, it was really just like 2 writers and someone leading content, and we've really grown. And again, it's really nice that we get to focus our energies on the actual creation side. But I think one of our biggest challenges is definitely making sure that you know, all the great content we're producing is distributed in the right way, because we don't necessarily own our own distribution channels. And happy to elaborate more if there are follow-up questions.
Got it. That makes sense. Certainly an interesting team of 8, but then obviously beyond that, there's so many other people, so many moving parts that make it go. At Better Mortgage, how many on your internal content marketing team, what does that look like?
Yeah, happy to take that one. So we're a pretty lean team. As I mentioned earlier in the intro, about 1.5 years is when we really started having a dedicated focus to content and SEO marketing. Not to say that there wasn't existing content marketing beforehand, but it was, as I've called it internally in the most lovingly way, content was kind of a junk drawer. Anyone could write an article, get it hosted and posted, and then let's hope someone maybe finds it. And so took a very different approach and quickly scaled that team. Again, still lean internally. So it's myself and Kristin, and then we have 2 SEO powerhouses that really help lead that keyword strategy and what we're deciding on a day-to-day basis of what's going to drive organic traffic and where can we win. So it's a team of 4 on the marketing side of things, but we would not be able to accomplish the volume and distribution of our content without our other partners. So the creative team, it's an internal creative team, a team of about 3 copywriters and a producer, as well as a designer. And we work very, very closely with them, almost a dotted line to a consolidated team, and getting things up and running, reviewed, legal, as I'm sure everyone on this call, dealing in the financial industry, and making sure that all of our stuff works and makes sense and protects the business as well as the customers reading it, right? And then we do work very closely with our product teams to ensure that it's throughout the product flow and being delivered when it makes sense to our email marketing team to make sure it's in those right campaigns. And there's a lot of back and forth, a 2-way arrow, if you will, of what content to put in. But similar to Meredith, making sure that there is a distribution channel and strategy, because we don't want to develop awesome, helpful content that just gets nowhere. And so we do have quite a bit of influence on that, particularly with organic social channels and amplifying it there with the email channels, and then really actually utilizing SEO as a distribution channel. But lean team of 4 plus, head of marketing who keeps the ship in the right direction, and then we're those that are making sure it works on a day-to-day.
Super interesting. Thanks, Bianca. And Benjamin, can you tell us about what your internal content marketing team looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So education is a pretty big part of TD Ameritrade's mission. So we have a pretty good sized team, and my team specifically, I've got 5 producers, writer, editor, kind of people wear a lot of hats within my team who do a lot of the writing of our courses and videos and putting together decks and stuff for presentations for events and stuff. But then we also work very closely with another visual design team that's got several motion graphic designers and just regular, graphic designers and illustrators, video producers. We also have a team of coaches who kind of act as our instructors and subject matter experts. And then, all kinds of support staff and developers, live event teams. And then, kind of similar to what Meredith was talking about, we're not actually officially part of marketing, but we partner very closely with marketing on distribution and paid campaigns and stuff like that. And then there's also the TD Ameritrade network, which is a whole other kind of separate but affiliated media company that does, like an OTT financial news network, and they have their whole own team of producers and editors and writers and all that. So quite a bit of resources going into content at TD Ameritrade.
Super interesting. It sounds like, yeah, I mean, it's just very interesting to hear how you guys have, how you have the lean team that focuses on a certain type of content, but then obviously there's so many more players there that help it get out into the world. So I think all of us would also like to know, at least I would. So I think the audience might be curious to know how, given that you guys operate as a team, how do you decide what's the most valuable kinds of content to produce for your organization? And I think here we're obviously thinking about metrics. And so if you care to share what tools you use for metrics, I know that some of you mentioned SEO, but if there's any particular software or tools or strategies that you've used, then I would love to hear that. So I think for this question, in determining what content is most valuable, let's have Better Mortgage take this first.
Awesome. I can go ahead and take that one. To give it a little bit of context, the way we evaluate content in the development is kind of across 3 different buckets, and with that, the associated KPIs and how you measure that. So we do have our SEO and organic driven content, and really that's seeking to drive as many people that have a high intent of getting a mortgage or finding a real estate agent or searching for a home as possible. And so the associated metrics with that is traffic. Obviously, we don't want to bring traffic to site that's not going to lead to conversion or client acquisition. And so we've imposed a qualitative metric of, okay, of those that visit, how many are actually starting throughout the flow? And are they taking that CTA action as it presents itself? And so that's like a more of an internal metric. But taking a step even before that, how do we determine what content pieces within the SEO world that will drive that traffic? And that's really a robust keyword strategy, looking at keyword volume, competition, opportunity to rank, applying at times arbitrary metrics, but we're not going to go after something that doesn't have at least 2,000 people searching for it in a month, right? We want to make sure that we're driving volume, but volume at quality. And so we'll use things like SEMrush or Moz Pro or even Google Ads Keyword Planner, which is more for the paid media side and SEM, but we leverage that to kind of understand the webbing and the content mapping that would work for our business. So that's probably 80% of our time focus to date has been really driving SEO driven content. The other buckets kind of fall in a similar way of measuring, and that's conversion based content, as I mentioned. Once someone has decided to get pre-approved for a mortgage, now what do we need to get them to actually lock and then, get a mortgage with Better as compared to some of our competitors? And so really working closely with product and sales and ops and understanding where people are getting stuck and how educational content might, help or support. I think most times people want to feel empowered in the decisions that they're making, particularly when it's a large financial decision or emotional decision like buying a house. And so being able to say, how do you lock your rate? What is a good rate? And then saying, if they read that, does that lead to that next milestone? Do they then take action and lock a rate? And that's also, not just long form written content, but webinars and video content as well. And then in a similar vein, either editorial or brand building content, kind of measured in a similar way. That's more with internal tools and just looking at those milestones of, did conversion actually occur? Our product and data team is really good at tagging that and giving us that visibility. And then the open connections, we've, lines of communication with our sales and ops team to identify those opportunities is how we actually make those decisions of what kind of content to produce and where to publish it.
Thank you for that. That is just so thought through. And it seems like you guys have really established the different funnels as well as, the steps that lead from one, I guess if you want to call it content funnel level to the next. So super insightful. Benjamin, would you care to share about how you guys determine the most valuable kinds of content for, what to produce?
Yeah. So we hold weekly editorial meetings where we bring our team and then partners from throughout the organization, subject matter experts and people who are client facing, all to kind of bring in lots of voices to kind of get a pulse on, we look at what's happening in the market, what's happening in the news, what our clients care about, what are they going to have questions about. We get input from our SEO partners on what topics are trending and, what is their demand for. We look at performance of previous content to inform what we do going forward. We stay in touch with our product teams and with our support teams to understand, to bubble up common questions and call drivers so we can make content against that kind of stuff. Or if there's, new products launching, we can get requests from partners to kind of create educational content to support that. So really, a wide variety of sources that we pull in, and we try to meet as, like I said, weekly, because a big part of what we do is we create a lot of evergreen, but also a lot of timely content and commentary to help people kind of make sense of what's happening in the news and what's buzzy, as a way to get traffic, but also because that's what our clients want to know about. And so kind of just regularly keeping an eye on the news and financial Twitter and all that kind of stuff, just kind of know what people are talking about. That's a big part of informing what we do. And then as far as tools and metrics, with my team particularly, we do a lot of video. So we're in YouTube analytics quite a bit, kind of measuring the success of content there with views, watch time, stuff like that. I'd say across our content, engagement metrics a lot of times are what we're looking at. So, traffic for our own sites, traffic coming to that. But then also looking a lot even on our, our content is definitely a prospecting tool and a marketing tool, but it's also a big client engagement tool. And so we're using our own kind of internal tracking to kind of see who's consuming the content, segments, kind of how they're responding to it, kind of behavioral impacts of content and stuff like that. So really kind of a wide variety of tools to measure the impact.
Thank you. That's super interesting. And you had mentioned, engagement levels, and I think that's another obviously important metric. And so, Meredith, would you like to share how Marcus determines what content is most valuable to produce, and maybe touch on some of the I know that you had mentioned before that you have some ways that you guys measure engagement specifically at Marcus. So would love to hear how you determine what's valuable. Maybe it's by engagement level.
Sure. Yeah. So I think similar to Bianca and Ben, we have keyword strategy, editorial meetings, regular touch bases with lines of businesses to kind of determine what is valuable at a certain moment in time, because it's kind of always changing. And I think from an SEO perspective, we know what works is I think similar to Bianca, and someone has the intent of applying for a mortgage. For us, it's really someone has the intent of opening a CD or an online savings account, applying for a personal loan. So that I think that is sort of a consistent space that we know and continue to operate in, but it's not changing constantly, which is nice to have something consistent. I think the other interesting thing about our team is we are, in a good way, I think, not necessarily held accountable for conversions and can't actually track that. One of our OKRs is around engagement. And I think if we get people to a product landing page, we've done our job, and then it's kind of on the product team to make sure that they walk the prospect through the onboarding flow in a seamless way, and then conversion is kind of on the product team. For engagement though, it's interesting because we measure it by what is the return rate. If you visited a content article or video, what is the return rate to any Marcus.com page over a 7-week rolling period? So have you come back after a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? And what does that metric look like? And then the other one is just amount of content page views per session, which right now for the year we're at 2.5, which I have to say I think is pretty decent, considering I don't really look around on sites, myself, for more than maybe two clicks if it's on BuzzFeed or some other more interesting site than maybe, financial resources hub. But for us, it really is about those engagement metrics. And I think what's been interesting to see as well with our Heard at Goldman Sachs content stream that I mentioned too, is oftentimes those articles have nothing to do with our products, right? Like they're talking about inflation or crypto or what's going on in the housing market. And again, those are not really related to our products, but we do tend to see a lot of traffic and a lot of interest in those topics. And I think the goal there really is kind of brand awareness and the fact that like, oh, I can come to Marcus to understand these more like macro topics that are going on and kind of get the GS expertise, but served up in a way that is understandable and makes sense to the average person.
Super interesting. I actually almost like a part 2 of this, and this can be for Better as well as Ben, because I'm so curious. I guess Ben, I could ask first, have you determined, you mentioned that your team produces a lot of YouTube content. So was that something like a test or has that proven to be one of your most successful content marketing initiatives in terms of what what TD Ameritrade would deem as successful ROI? Maybe you can speak a little on that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story there that goes back several years where, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, even we created this series of investing basics videos. And this was before our team was even doing anything with kind of YouTube or anything like that. But we gave them to the social team at TD Ameritrade at the time, and they put them on the YouTube channel, which really wasn't getting much attention at that point. And they kind of just put them there and forgot about them. And then over the years, they grew like incredible search placement. So keywords like stocks and bonds, like #1 video, and just completely organic without even any effort. They just kind of rose to the top. And so, and then we're getting, significant monthly views, like doing very, very well. And so that really was kind of the signal, like, okay, there's something here, like the type of content we're creating is really resonating with people. And so over time, we were able to, as we were able to show that content was successful and keep making more of it that was also successful, we were able to our team was able to kind of have more control of the YouTube channel and eventually turn it into an education channel. And so that performance and those results of just raw, like organic traffic that our content was getting was really what kind of made the case for YouTube and turned it into one of the biggest places. And there's also the fact that, it's the #2 most visited website on the internet. It's the 2nd biggest search engine. I mean, it's a place where people are. And so, we want to be where our prospects are. We want to be where our clients are. And even talking with clients, we found that, they say, when I have a question, I just go to YouTube. And so we want to make sure that we're there to serve our clients in the places where they're, looking for help.
That's fascinating. Thank you for that backstory. And for Better Mortgage, I'm curious to know if, obviously you produce a lot of blog content, but have you determined that is that one of your most successful converting type of content marketing initiatives, or is there something else, say like longer form content or like any other, maybe like a white paper that you guys have tried and maybe didn't work as well? What has proven to be the most successful conversion wise for you?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think it really depends. So we have a few channels that obviously we worked really successfully in and are testing in. Because we're such a young and lean team, we are doing a lot of testing and we'll continue to do testing to understand what works best for our audiences and their goals. And of course, our goal to drive conversion or traffic. Our audiences, I think, like for context, our audiences can be all over the place in the mortgage funnel. But we're working and we've worked really hard to segment them into super specific milestones to understand what their needs and goals are and how we can best get them to convert. Because the mortgage process is a fairly long timeline, like for home buyers can be from anywhere from like 1 month to a year to even longer than that if they're struggling to find their dream home. And for refinancers, it can be like 45 days or so. We have to be super, super thoughtful in how we're presenting our content, when it's presented, and how we're getting in front of audiences. So long story short, I guess, I think our long form blog series content has been super successful in the way that we presented it, because that's our major focus, and has been our major focus over the last year and a half that we've been a team. But we've really put that focus on blog and long form content to drive traffic. And more recently, as we come into this next year, we're going to focus even more on converting folks from, pre-approval of their mortgage to locking in their rate and funding with us, like getting them all the way through the funnel, creating super sticky folks. So this focus on blog content has really allowed us to test where we introduce our different pieces of content to customers within the product or through email to see what's working, what's not working. So we are planning on doing more testing into video. More recently, we've moved into creating interactive webinars to educate customers at all stages of the funnel, which is really exciting. I get to co-host with subject matter experts, which is really cool. We get live questions. And we've also begun to expand into developing explainer videos and to introduce them within the product and flow to help people along the way, because mortgage process is complicated. We want to make it super easy, or as easy as possible. As Ben mentioned, and also historically, video content is insane for conversions. So we're hoping to get that up and running in the next few months and into the next year. And then, of course, like one other kind of segment or channel that we use, and we like our amortization schedule calculator, right? It's like all these things that are basically putting the numbers in our customers' hands to understand what they can actually afford, how much they're going to pay over time. Those are really big drivers of conversion as well. But yeah, way more to come in the future.
That's awesome. I think it's great to hear that financial brands are trying different things, right? Because we also have some clients sometimes who may be leery to try, say, YouTube or put out events and webinars. But it's good to hear that everybody's trying different things, and then obviously something sticks. But it's up to your organization to figure out what determines the best ROI to build, and then put some resources behind what works. But it seems like obviously we're hearing analytics are important, and that drives kind of how you create more content. And video also seems to be one of the strongest new forms of content out there. So I think all of us are also curious, and getting to the heart of this event is compliance. We all deal with compliance people. We all have experienced compliance bottlenecks. Some organizations might have one person reviewing your content, say if it's like a smaller fintech startup, and then some people might have upwards of 5 people. And it depends also on how you're structured. Are you a fintech, or are you, say, like a large bank? So I am curious to know what your compliance team looks like and how often you've run into compliance bottlenecks. So I think for this one, we could probably start with Meredith, if you don't mind sharing what that looks like for Marcus.
Sure. So we interact with legal and compliance a lot. We have twice weekly online reviews with them where we have a dedicated hour on Wednesdays and Fridays where we cover new articles, videos, paid social copy, and other types of content in those sessions. Our legal and compliance partners also have separate marketing reviews with our email teams, our product lines of business. So we are very close with our compliance teams. I think the thing that's added complexity over the past few years is the fact that we launched an invest product. And so, previously when Marcus was just offering loans and savings products, we were under GS Bank. And now the invest product is under a separate legal entity, GS & Co. But they're all for the consumer under the brand of Marcus. Like no one outside of our legal and compliance teams really cares about the fact, to be frank, that we're under two separate legal entities, but it is a reality that we have to deal with, from a marketing standpoint all the time. And so there are, folks on the bank side, there are folks on the GS&Co side that we deal with. And then for these Heard at Goldman Sachs pieces that I mentioned, not only do the subject matter experts review the pieces if they're being quoted or interviewed, but then they're compliance partners. So if we're writing about, is art a good investment? And we have someone from our private wealth team talking about, if you should invest in a multi-million-dollar piece of art, not only is that person reviewing it, but their compliance partners reviewing it. So we can have upwards of 8 teams, and that's just teams, not people. So like 20 people reviewing articles sometimes. And the other fun wrinkle is that anything that mentions tax, beyond like IRAs have potential tax benefits, but anything specific will go to outside counsel for review. So we have it is a very thorny process sometimes, but we have a great, I will say we have a great working relationship with our compliance partners. Like, with all that said, they do understand, I think, what content is trying to achieve. That Marcus as a business needs to be able to compete in the space, and to do that, like, we have to produce good marketing content. And so they, they're great to work with, but I think there is just a lot of scrutiny in our space, and part of it is due to the fact, I think, also that some of our legal and compliance partners, if they've been at the firm for years, the consumer business is still new to them, so they're trying to learn too. And so I think we have to be understanding of where they're coming from, and recognize that this is new to Goldman. Goldman is 150 years old, and everyone's seen them in the headlines before. So I think there's just like some extra due diligence that they're doing, and for good reason.
Thank you. Wow. 18, 20 people. That's a lot. I also think it's because, obviously Marcus and Goldman Sachs is considered the authority. So when you are writing, there's a lot of substantiation that happens, and we have experience with that, of course. I'd love to hear how many people represent your compliance team, and how often do you run into compliance bottlenecks with your content?
Yeah, so I mean, similar to what Meredith was saying, we have a good, close relationship with our compliance team. Within our compliance organization, there's a dedicated team for communications review. And so they'll, I'm not exactly even sure how many people, there's a team and we work with a lot of them. It's kind of a different person each time, depending on who's available when we send over a piece of content, but it's more than like 2 or 3. And they're all dedicated to just reviewing content that we make, but also any kind of public-facing communications from across the firm. But building a good relationship with them over time has been key to our success, particularly with, when you have multiple people reviewing things, it takes time. And if you're trying to create timely content, that can be a problem. And so I think one of the big things that we really focused on is kind of building the relationship, understanding what kind of concerns or things that compliance is looking for, and knowing just how to avoid those in the first place. And then, one big thing that we were able to do is we had a goal to be able to create timely videos within a week. So if there is like a big news item, we want to be able to, on Monday in the editorial meeting, decide, all right, we need to make a video about this, and be able to launch it by Friday, which is like unheard. I mean, that was unheard of before we started doing that. But the key to doing that was having a great relationship with compliance, and kind of setting service level agreements with them, and helping them understand, kind of like what Meredith was saying, like, there's a reason for this. There's a business reason that we need to be able to create content quickly, and that we need people to be able to review it quickly. By providing that rationale and working with them and listening to their concerns and being responsive to their feedback, I think we've been able to build a relationship of trust. And I think that trust between the teams and being aligned on what the ultimate goals are is super important.
Thank you for expanding. That is also, it's different at every organization. So it's nice to see how, even though you two are obviously huge financial services organizations, how it looks different. And so Better Mortgage, I'm curious, with regard to compliance review, what does that look like at Better?
Yeah, fun topic, compliance. I was at an RIA previously, so I had a lot of experience from like that lens of an SEC regulated business. And I will say, coming to Better, it was better as it relates to mortgage and compliance. That said, all of our external communications, content, video, social assets does need to be reviewed by them, right? They're protecting not only us as a business, but we want to be the authority in the space of how to home buy and make sure that we're threading the needle and giving enough, but not to the point of, hey, this is financial advice, right? That's the lens that they're always looking at it. And so kind of to Ben's point, building that relationship, really understanding where that line is, and we could bake that into our process before, it even goes to our copywriters, make sure that where the watch outs are accounted for in the brief. So that way we're not investing in developing time for legal to come back after the review of the draft to say, nope, you got to cut this, or we can't go do this. And so it's really just building them into our process and recognizing that that is a core element and a piece. Relationship is key. And so thankfully we have one dedicated resource, and our content is fairly consistent in where we go. But then similar to Meredith, actually Better has a lot of subsidiaries and affiliate partners that we work with. So we don't just have Better the holdco, but Better Mortgage, Better Real Estate, Better Cover, and unlike SEC, but in other regulations with the CFPB, we have RESPA, right? And so we want to make sure that it's super clear what the relationship is between those various affiliates. And so that's oftentimes where we kind of go back and forth with legal of who's speaking, who are we talking about, who is the one that's actually educating here. And I think the more we can get to firm and kind of hard rules and direction, the easier it is for us to produce at speed, and get ahead of it. And also being a startup, and their speed and efficiencies of scale, while maintaining quality, is definitely something that permeates across the entire marketing organization. And so ensuring that we have compliance partners that are aligned with that and know, okay, this is risk, you need to change it before going out, versus this is guidance that we should apply moving forward, but we can still enable us to move quickly. And so definitely built that relationship. But as we grow, obviously, with that comes more visibility and more risk. And so just building that into the process, having ongoing conversations. Kristin does a good job of keeping our compliance team on track, right? We're really saying this is what's coming down the pike, and when we need feedback from you, and we're able to lead versus reacting to. So that's quite fortunate, as I was saying, compared to my previous experience where they were more of a client, and in this case, we're the client. So definitely helpful.
Awesome. That's so interesting how different it is across all three firms. So before we jump into audience questions, I think one last question, and you can just answer this in, one sentence. I'd love to know, what do you think is high quality content? What does that mean to you? What is content of value? And so what does that look like? It could be some keywords, it could be a sentence. So I will ask Ben first.
Yeah, I think for us, quality content is useful and relevant to our audience. That's what makes it good. It's not necessarily production value. Those things matter, but it comes back to editorial. You can make something that's the slickest, best looking piece of content, but if your audience doesn't care about it, it's a waste. So relevance and usefulness.
Thank you. And Better Mortgage?
Yeah, I think it's twofold for me and for Better. We want to make content accessible and valuable for our readers, to not only educate them on the options that are right in front of them, or to set expectations on their journey ahead, but it's also to build their confidence in themselves and their financial profile, and our product to make that next step with us. So all the quality content that we create should do both of those things. At Better, that's like the absolute standard for our content. Unfortunately, no one learns about mortgages in school, and it's typically self-taught, which can be frustrating and complex. And like at Better, we're really hoping to make this something that is accessible, not just financially and easy, but through the content and education that we're putting on our site.
Thank you. And Meredith, what do you think is content of value or high quality content?
Yeah, I think for us, it means that our customers and prospects feel empowered and like they have control of their finances, or at least have the understanding to take control. Like Kristin just mentioned, you know, personal finance isn't really taught in school, and it seems like such a miss because even people with a lot of money sometimes don't really understand what to do with it or how to manage it. And I think finance can be really intimidating for a lot of people. And so for us, if our readers or viewers can watch a video or read an article and feel like they've learned something and didn't have to reread paragraphs multiple times, that to us is high quality content.
Great. So thank you guys for sharing your insights. And I think this now is a great time to open up to audience questions. We have a couple of questions, and some are similar, and actually some are asking direct questions about some of our overflow questions. So I think we have first question is one from Carla at Lending Club, and it actually talks directly in a way. I think it was Kristin, and one of you had mentioned calculators, and I think that was Better Mortgage that had mentioned calculators. And she wants to know, do you develop those in-house or do you outsource the calculator functions because of compliance and legal?
Yeah, actually, I'd throw this one over to Bianca.
Oh, sorry, missed that. Yeah, I can talk about that. In-house, we develop them in-house. This is where partnership and collaboration and influence really plays a key role. No one on my team is a front-end engineer or coder. And as a result, we really rely on our product design and engineering partners to build this in-house. Where we play a strategic role is identifying who needs it, who's the audience, and what are they trying to solve. And the reason we built out those calculators and tools is to drive SEO and organic traffic. Oftentimes, if someone is looking at the point of how to buy a home or should I refinance, right? It's high intent level questions. And so we build the calculator and tool as the, call it, carrot that we're dangling. But it's really built, again, surrounding for SEO, and to rank, we need at least 600 words on the page. And so it's not like necessarily embedded, but a piece altogether and a channel altogether. However, with other product partners and email partners, we also recognize, or later in the flow, right, not necessarily from an acquisition standpoint, that you might be searching for it when you're starting your journey, but you might also want it later in the journey as well. And so being able to widgetize them and pull them out and use them elsewhere in our content is also how we kind of get the buy-in, right? It's not just bringing it to site, but how can we leverage this efficiently elsewhere? And so when prioritizing those, we'll work with other teams as well, whether it's the paid media team or the product teams, and saying, hey, like, does this work for you too? And so various, players are all bought in and saying, hey, I can use this. And then I think, we do amplify on social channels. Any of our content, I think this just goes back to, like, you can't develop something without making sure someone's going to see it, or that you don't have it in front of your audience. You can build the most beautiful piece, the most valuable piece, would drive all of the conversions if someone just read it. But if you don't have someone reading it or using it or watching it, like, it's just not going to work. And so also partnering with our social teams and seeing, like, where is the need and can we collaborate here to really ensure that it meets them holistically across all the various stakeholders.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know from my experience at Betterment as well, when I was content manager there, calculators and tools are such a great, as you mentioned, like a carrot for the start of the content funnel. They're wonderful tools. They're easy to use if you have the right designer and developer. There's also an attendee question for Ben specifically. You had mentioned that you create content around topics and ideas that may have been causing buzz, so more along that social listening line. And so the attendee wants to know how you research. Do you use a specific kind of software or forum, or is there somebody who is in that role, like, on a dedicated basis?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I would say for like a lot of our editorial meetings, it's really, we just kind of crowdsource from the group, and all of us individually, spend a lot of time reading financial media, a lot of time on financial Twitter. We also get input from, we do work with a vendor on SEO, and so they'll provide like trending topics input and stuff like that. But it's really like kind of relying on the expertise of our team, and kind of everyone on our team is expected to be like immersed in the financial media world to kind of know what people are talking about. So, it's not necessarily, I mean, we do get input from our social team sometimes, and we'll look at content or comments like on our videos for questions that people have. But it's really just kind of like, we make sure that we are in the same environment that our clients are in, so that we're seeing what they're seeing, and kind of, know what kind of questions to answer, and what kinds of things are getting a lot of attention.
Super interesting, like an editorial brain trust, so to speak. And then you decide on exactly what to execute on. Awesome. I think one of the questions that was started with a calculator question, but then was something that I was curious and wanted to ask anyway, was beyond your internal content marketing team, how often do you find yourselves leveraging, say, like external specialists, or say agency support? And so obviously Scribe would not exist, because without that demand, then we wouldn't have any clients to service. So we're curious, and this was a specific question from Michael at Strivers Row Consulting. How often, or do you have the budget? Do you work that in? How often are you leveraging external support in the form of content marketing efforts for writing, producing, or anything? So maybe I can let Meredith tackle that question first.
Sure. Yeah. So we for video, we work with an agency for video production. We have an agency that we work with from an SEO perspective for backlinking, and also just like general keyword research and consulting. I think with our writers and the editorial team creating the content, we have found that in-house really kind of works best, just because of primarily like the legal and compliance reviews, because we expect our writers to kind of like take their pieces through legal and compliance and stakeholder reviews and really own them. Like it gets a little hard when someone on our team is playing middleman to like, relay feedback back and forth from the writer to the legal and compliance teams. And Shindy, I know you mentioned and are very familiar with, in addition to our reviews, our articles have to be like heavily substantiated, to a point where it's like, you would think that a claim, like an obvious claim, it's a good idea to have 3 to 6 months of savings in your emergency fund, is like common knowledge. Our legal and compliance team requires that to be substantiated. So I think, purely from an operational and process perspective, we found that our writers, do best when they're in-house, but we've definitely worked with agencies before who have provided really, really great content and have the expertise. I just think for us, it's not a budget issue, it's more of a process and operational issue. But certainly we work with agencies for SEO and video.
That makes sense. That obviously, yeah, that part of it, to smooth things, stream things along within compliance, it would be internal. How often are you guys finding that you're leveraging, say, or relying on expertise specifically related to mortgage content?
Yeah, I think very similar to how Meredith described their workflow and their work with other vendors. Scribe has been like an amazing partner in producing content for us. So Shindy and Scribe team, thank you so much for helping along the way. And continuing to use Scribe and their copywriters as a partner will continue to help us meet our goals in content production and conversion and traffic driving. I think in terms of what like using external folks versus internal, it really depends on the type of work we want to produce. So as far as like SEO and kind of like general knowledge or general topic type questions and law content that we want to create, it's much easier, I think, for us to put that type of content in front of a partner agent or a partner copywriter. Whereas things that happen to do with our brand or our product, those things that we need internal research and guidance on from other subject matter experts, we rely heavily on our internal copywriters. That's not to say that all of our copywriters that we have are mortgage geniuses and have been in the industry for years and years. I think there's a lot of learning in general that comes along with joining any type of financial startup, and especially mortgage, something that changes on a weekly basis, whether it's in regards to rates or process. But yeah, we rely so heavily on, again, our partnership with Scribe and their copywriters, as well as other like infographic creators. And it's really about being able to connect and work super closely within the process. So it's a lot of project managing, but all for the best. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. We're almost at time, but I think one question was about total compliance turnaround. So from, I guess, soup to nuts, how long it takes to get content approved through compliance teams. And so I know that when Ben was on, he was mentioning YouTube content turnaround can be as quick as 1 week, because some topics that are trending 1 week may not be the next week. So I'm wondering if you guys can give short responses before we end here about what a compliance bottle or turn time looks like from start to finish.
It depends on the topic, right, and the content type. I would say our fastest can be a couple days. You know, the first time our rates on savings accounts dropped, we turned something out in 48 hours because it was a priority. Other pieces can take, you know, weeks. So I would say average though is for compliance approval, like a week and a half-ish.
Great. And Better Mortgage, how often does it take for compliance review on your side?
We have strict process. I will give myself and our team a pat on the back for that. But again, working super closely with our compliance folks and giving them a very strong heads up about what's coming down the pike. And we also have added some resources there, which is great. But it can take for compliance review anywhere from like 1 to 2 days for like a full approval on a content piece. So I think that's come a long way from where we started, which it could have taken up to like 4 days to get an approval. So very proud of that fact.
Awesome. And Ben, I spoke for you earlier before you came back on. It's fascinating that you guys can get YouTube approvals within a week. So thank you so much to the panelists who submitted questions. And I know we didn't get to everybody, but I appreciate that you contributed some questions and maybe we can answer them at a later date. But that's unfortunately all the time that we have for today. So thank you everyone for taking the time to join, especially our panelists for sharing their very granular and insightful strategies that hopefully many of the audience members can apply right away. So be sure to check out the Financial Narrative website regularly because we have other upcoming events. They have a Meet the Members speed networking event on August 3rd. And there's a conversation with Jake Siewert, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, of Goldman Sachs and Warburg Pincus on August 10th. And for those of you who are not Financial Narrative members, you can visit the website at financialnarrative.org and click on Explore Membership. And I'm sure one of the ladies, Ashley Jones or Catherine, would love to help you get started there. So thank you everyone for joining our Content Marketing in a Brave New World panel. We hope to see you all soon. Thank you.